Hi, everyone, and welcome to another English lesson for travelers. And today we are going to be taking a look at how to find your gate in the airport. I know it sounds like it might be easy, but sometimes in those big airports it can be a little bit tricky to find your gate. Let's find out how right now. All right, probably the first thing that we should do is ask, what is a gate at the airport? We can think about gates in maybe somebody's yard. They have a little fence and there's a gate to get in. We can think of gates as being a way to enter a park or a farmer's field. These are all gates. But what about at the airport? What does it mean to have a gate at an airport? Well, it's simply the term that airports have given that place where your airplane is going to park. And some airports might have 20, 30, or even over 100 gates, places for your airplane to park. And so what you need to do is figure out how to get to your gate so that you get on the right plane, right? You don't want to be off in the wrong wing of the airport when your plane is about to board or leave, and you're at the wrong gate, the wrong place to board your flight. And so in today's lesson, we're going to talk about all of those things that you should know in order to be able to find your gate using English. Most airports around the world will use English to help people find their way through the airport. And so knowing some of these terms in English will be very helpful to you. And as long as you know these English terms, you'll have no trouble finding your gate. Now, in a lot of airports, it will be quite simple, especially if you're only flying within your own country. The airport that you use to fly within your own country is usually quite small. It's usually called the domestic terminal. A lot of times there'll only be maybe 4 or 5 gates at this small airport, and it'll be very easy for you just to look up at the signs, check your boarding pass, and be able to find the gate that's written or typed out on your boarding pass. And so you shouldn't have any problem in small airports. But what about those big airports? You know, if you're traveling internationally, you might have to go through Hong Kong or Beijing or Bangkok, maybe LAX in Los Angeles or Chicago O'Hare. If you know that you have to go through some of these larger airports, you should take some time and learn how to find your gate, because it can be a little bit confusing, especially for the first-time flyer. Some of these large airports may have 4, 5 wings, corridors that spread out from the main central airport terminal. These wings, we'll call them wings, or corridors or hallways that branch out from the main area. In the airport, they call them a concourse. Concourse. And so as you come out of security, you need to know how to find the right concourse in order for you to find the right gate. So how do you do that? How do you find the right concourse so that you can find your gate? Well, the first place to look as you come out of security, and if you haven't seen that lesson, just check out our channel and find the lesson on how to get through security clearance. When you come out of security, pull out your boarding pass. You probably already have it in your hand. Just check your boarding pass, and on that boarding pass, it will have your gate number. But not only will the number be there, there'll usually be an alphabet in front of the number. It could be A, B, C, D, E, or F, depending on how many concourses your airport has. So that letter, so let's say it's C38, that means you first of all need to find Concourse C. And once you get down the right corridor, that right concourse, it'll be quite easy to find your gate number. Now, sometimes when you pull out your boarding pass, you might find the text that says gate, but then it's left blank. Or it might have the letters T, B, D. And you might wonder, well, what concourse is that? I don't see a T concourse anywhere. And what's the B for? And what's the D? I mean, do I have to go to 3 different concourses? What do I do? Well, actually, the TBD stands for to be determined. In other words, when your ticket was printed, your flight had not yet been assigned to a particular gate. And so they couldn't put it on your boarding pass because they didn't know where your flight would park. And so it's only once they have decided where your plane is going to park that they can put it on the ticket. So if you got your boarding pass online the night before, there's a good chance that maybe your flight hasn't been assigned a gate. And so it'll just say to be determined, or TBD. Or it might be blank. It might be that you got to the airport very early, and when they gave you your boarding pass at the ticket counter, they still didn't know where your plane would park. And so they just left it blank. But you don't have to panic, because there's another way that you can find where your gate will be. And that will be up on one of those big screens that you will find all over the airport. Sometimes it's a big screen, a TV monitor, or sometimes it's a big board with numbers that they can change. But look for that flight information board. There's usually some just as you get out of security so that you can check for your flight as soon as you get out of security. I recommend, even if there is a gate number printed on your boarding pass, it's a good idea to still go directly to one of these flight information screens. Make sure that the gate number that's printed on your boarding pass is still correct, because a lot of times there can be a gate change. A gate change. And usually they'll announce it over the speakers in the airport, but sometimes the speakers in the airports aren't very good, and you can't make out what they're saying, especially if they're speaking in another language. And so it's always much better just to go to these flight information boards, look for your flight on the board, and then right beside it will be the current gate number. Now, some of these flight information boards can be a little bit confusing, especially if there's over 100 flights on the board, because they'll list all of the flights that are happening within the next 3 hours or so. So there can be a lot of flights up there. How do you find your flight? Well, there's 3 different ways that can help you find your flight quite easily. First of all, make sure that you're looking at departures, because sometimes there'll be a board for departing flights and another board for arrivals. You want to be sure that you're looking at departures. So find the departures flight information, and then they are usually organized in 3 different ways. Sometimes it's by airline. And so if you know the airline that you're flying with, you can check and see for your airline right on the board. Another way that they're organized is by the time of departure. So on your boarding pass, even if it doesn't have your gate number, it will have your departure time listed there. And so you can search the board based on the departure time of your flight, and that'll make it easier. If you know you're leaving at 9 o'clock, just search for 9 o'clock first, and then there might only be about 4 or 5 planes leaving around 9 o'clock, and you'll be able to find your flight that way. Sometimes they are organized based on your destination. So if you're going to Bangkok, you can see if they're organized by destination, then just go and look for Bangkok, and then you should be able to find your flight number very easily there. Now, the one thing to keep in mind, though, if you are searching for your flight based on your destination, is that you need to know whether or not you have a stopover and are changing planes. For example, if I'm going from Toronto to Bangkok, but I know that I have a stopover in Hong Kong and I have to change planes there, then even though my destination is Bangkok, when I'm looking on the board, I need to be looking for the flight going to Hong Kong, where I have to change planes. So keep that in mind if you're searching by destination. All right, so you've found your flight on the board. Congratulations, you've found your flight. Now the thing to do is to follow across the screen to check 2 things. One is the status of your flight. There are about 5 different things that it might say, and this is good information for you to know, so be sure and look for this as well. What is the status of your flight? It could say, and usually it does say, on time, and that's good to know. It's on time. Another thing that it might say is delayed. What that usually means is that the plane that you are scheduled to fly on is late coming in. And so they know that because it's not coming in until 9 o'clock, that they have to let people off, they have to take their luggage off, they have to clean the airplane. They know that even though it was scheduled on your boarding pass for 9 o'clock, it probably won't leave until 10 o'clock. And so it says delayed. All right, here's another thing that your board could say. And when you see this, it's time to panic because it might say boarding. Boarding. And what that means is that they've already started to let people on your flight. And what that means is that you only have about 10 minutes to get to your gate before they close the doors. And after they close the gate, close the doors, they don't let anybody else on. So if you see boarding, then the next thing to do is confirm that you have the right gate number and start making your way quickly. I would run, if I were you, to your concourse and then to your gate number. Boarding. Another thing that it can say is gate closed. Gate closed. And if you see that, then you know that you've already missed your flight. There's nothing you can do. Once the gate is closed, they don't let anybody else on. So what I would recommend, if you see gate closed, is to find the counter, and usually there'll be one past security. You might have to look on the airport directory to find where your airline, Air Canada or British Airways, where they have their counter inside the past security. Go directly to there and start making arrangements for getting on the next flight available for your destination. Now, what if it says, you're looking at the board, and it says gate changed? Gate changed. Well, what that means is that even if you do have a gate number printed on your boarding pass, your flight has been reassigned to a different gate. It could be that there's something wrong with your gate, or it could be that the previous flight got delayed. And so because that gate is already occupied by another plane, your flight has had to park at a different gate. And so there's been a gate change. So if you see that on the board, gate change, and this is one of the reasons why it's a good idea to check the board, because it can happen quite often. There's a gate change, and you might, if you're just going by your boarding pass and you're heading down the wrong concourse, it might take you 10, 15 minutes to get to your gate, only to realize that your airplane is now on a completely different concourse, and it may take you another 20 minutes to go from one concourse to the other concourse and find the new gate. And so that's why it's a good idea, even if your gate number is printed on your boarding pass, to check the board to see if there has been a gate change. A gate change. Now, one last thing that might be printed on your flight information board is your flight is canceled. Canceled. What does that mean? Canceled. What it simply means is that your flight is no longer flying, and you'll have to, again, go to the counter and make some other arrangements so that you can get to your destination. Your flight has been canceled. It's not going, and you need to make other arrangements. And so after the flight status, then the next column on that information board will be the gate number for your flight. And that's the most important information on this flight board, is your gate number. Now, if the flight number on the information board is different than what's on your boarding pass, always go with the information that's on the screen. That will be the most up-to-date information. It'll be the most reliable. Your ticket may have been printed last night at home, right? If you did a check-in online, but the information on the board is current right at the time that you're looking at it. And so that's the one to go with. So if I see it's different, then I memorize the new gate number, or maybe even write it down on your ticket so that if you forget the gate number, you can always refer to what you wrote down. Write down the new gate number and start making your way to that gate. First of all, the concourse. If you're in a large airport, look for the concourse. That's usually A, B, C, D, E, or F. And that's the first thing to look for. And then look up. Usually the airports have information about how to find your concourse in signs that are up, hanging from the ceiling of the airport. So if you're looking around wondering how do I know which concourse to go to? How do I find my concourse? Well, you're probably looking in the wrong place, because the information is up. So look up and just follow the signs to your concourse. Usually the sign will say A, B, C, and then they'll have arrows pointing in the direction that you need to start walking to get to A, B, and C. And then it might say D and F, and it might have a different arrow going another way. So always look up for the signs and follow the arrows. The arrows. And after you've walked a little bit, they'll have another sign. And so if Concourse B branches off, then the arrows are going to probably change. And Concourse A is going to point in this direction, and Concourse B is going to point in this direction. So depending on your flight number, whether it's A or B or C, just keep following those signs and following the arrows, and they'll take you to the right concourse. And once you're in the right concourse, it'll be pretty easy to find the gate number itself. Now, depending on how big the airport is as you follow these signs, they may take you to maybe an escalator that you have to go up in order to get to the next level to find that concourse. And so keep your eyes out for how the signs are leading you, and it'll usually take you to the bottom of an escalator, and it'll have an up sign, and just to get to B, you have to go up the escalator. Just follow the signs. In some airports, there may be a tram or a small train to take you from the security area to a concourse that's quite a ways away. And they know that people wouldn't maybe have enough time to walk there. And so the signs with the arrows will take you to a place where there's trains. And so if the signs take you to a place where there's trains, and there's usually going in two directions, so you have to make sure that you get on the right train, or you'll be going further away from your concourse instead of going to it. And so make sure you get on the right train. All you have to really do is look up at the signs again, and it'll usually say Concourse. Maybe this time it's D and E, and it'll have an arrow of which direction the train is going to go in order to get to Concourse D and E. And if you are there and you want to go to A, B, and C instead of E and F, well, then just turn around and check the signs on the train that is going in the other way. And then it'll tell you that that train is going to A, B, and C. Okay, so that can be a little tricky if you have to take a train to your concourse. There are some airports where you even have to go down an escalator and walk through a tunnel. If you've ever been to Detroit, Michigan, you have to walk sometimes under a runway in a tunnel to get to other concourses. And so it can be sometimes a little bit of a challenge to find your right concourse depending on the airport that you're in. If you find that you are having difficulty finding the right concourse for your gate number, you can usually stop and ask somebody to help you. In most airports, there'll be an information counter there with people that you can go and talk to, or you might have an airline counter, or even just stopping a passenger that is walking along the way. Just stop and ask them in English, usually is the best. Excuse me, can you help me? Excuse me, can you help me? I am having trouble finding my concourse. Or you can say, I'm having trouble finding my gate. Either one. They'll be able to help you. They'll look at your boarding pass, and they'll know which way to point you so that you get going in the right direction. And so I always remember that at the airport, there are people ready to help you. If you're a little bit lost and you're having trouble finding your gate number, you can ask for help. All right, well, that's it for our lesson on how to find your gate. In our next lesson, we're going to talk about how to board your plane. What are the steps that you need to follow to make sure that you get on your plane, get on the right plane? And so be sure and come back for that. If you're not sure about how to find these lessons, we have building a whole series on English for travelers. Just be sure and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And whenever you want to find other lessons, right below this video, there's a photograph of me in a circle. If you click on that, that will take you to our actual YouTube channel, where you can find all of the lessons that we have on learning English. More than just for travelers. We have over 100 lessons now to help you become fluent in English. So if you're struggling to learn English, be sure and check out our channel and find the other lessons, subscribe. And if you found this lesson helpful, something that you can do to return the favor is give us a little like. That helps YouTube know that's a good video. Also, share it with some friends. If you know that a friend is traveling and they might be worried about how to get through the airport, share it with them. And then if you subscribe and ring the little notifications bell, YouTube will let you know every time that we release a new lesson, and that way you'll be sure not to miss any. So that does it for today. I hope that you enjoyed the lesson. We'll see you next time here at Study English with Frank. So long for now.